Hey everybody, welcome to No Fear, the podcast that explores the power of courage and fear. I am Pete Pepe. I'm the co-founding members of 3777. I have the great pleasure of having the other two co-founding members of 3777 with me today. To my left is Mr. Iiro Seppänen. Yes, and directly across from me is Mr. Jeb Corliss. Alrighty, now today's subject, we are going to be talking about overcoming fears. Now, this is a cool subject because fear is a primal instinct. It is something that we have grown. It's been part of our evolutionary need for survival. But a lot of people actually let their fears control them. And what we will kind of want to be discussing today is actually how you can break free of that and you can actually control and use your fear to your advantage. So to dig a little deeper into this, I want to get Iiro's perspective and let him talk a little bit more about fear.
I think it's interesting, like you, as human creatures, we are only born with two fears. So we're afraid of loud noises, and then we're afraid of falling. And that's why all the babies grab their parents' fingers and make sure that they don't fall from their lap. And everything else we've learned somewhere along the way. It can be either like a traumatic experience, or it can be something from our parents, or story, or even a movie. And usually, like I remember this from my school, so everything that you can learn, you can also unlearn. And that kind of works for fears as well. So not to unlearn them, but maybe program your brain a little bit different, that the fears has less effect in your life. And
okay.
yeah.
Well, look, that's awesome. But I before we unleash Jeb, I want to get your perspective. We'd spoken about this a little earlier, and we have kind of been throwing around this theme about Jaws.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the surf break. We're talking about Jaws as in the shark.
Yeah, no, that whole movie traumatized me and everyone from my generation. So I couldn't swim in. I'm from Finland and we have lots of lakes and we don't have any sharks there. But I didn't want to swim in the lakes because I was afraid that had in my mind I had that da-dum, 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 that something is going to come and bite me. And actually it affected my life because I started to avoid some things. And when I went to warm waters where I know there could be little sharks and I didn't want to go there in the water at all. And I started to avoid it. And in some ways, like my world started to shrink only because I watched the movie like 5-7 years before. And it was remarkable how much it affected my life. And then I heard like gradual exposure therapy, where you start slowly progressing towards your fear and taking baby steps towards them. And I realized like I had to get out of the fear of sharks. And I started to study what would be the least dangerous sharks that you could interact with. And I found out in Bahamas they had this place where you can go and you actually feed sharks underwater. There was a mind-blowing concept for me before, but now it was about to become my reality. And then I joined that group, and I stand way further back. And there was this, I thought he was so brave and he had so much courage. There was this guy who fed like reef sharks at the end of the stick. And that was my kind of first exposure for sharks underwater. And I realized that they are not these kind of a mindless beasts that our movies and the media makes it out to be. And I slowly started to progress. Like then I hired like the whole boat, and I wanted to be the guy who was feeding the sharks. And then slowly actually in this phase, I think we lived around year 99. And I wanted to do more shark experiences. And by coincidence, I went to Norway and to Iraq. My passion was base jumping. And then I was in Iraq. I was just heard around the corner. And then I almost died. And I was like, what is that story? I went closer and there, look and behold, there was Jeff standing. And we started to talk about base jumping and we struck up a friendship. And besides base jumping, he started to talk about his passion for sharks. And I've only done a few shark dives. And then you had already told the world and dive with them. And something that I was so afraid of before, I didn't want to go in the water. Now that kind of a door had opened and I realized like, okay, here is a doorkeeper for these adventures like underwater.
I got to say something. I'm not going to let you off the hook so quickly. I'm going to pause on him for a second. Wait, so you watch Jaws, you're a kid, and you grow up and you're freaked out by sharks.
Absolutely.
But what in your head then gets you to go, fuck, I'm going to go feed sharks and swim with them? Like what prompted you to do that? What was it basically like, hey, I have a fear. I've grown older now. I want to start conquering these fears. So I'm going to pick one of the things I'm most fearful of and I'm going to face it. I'm going to face that fear. Like, yeah,
I think it comes there because I was quite a scary little kid when I grew up. So I had a great imagination, and I could like imagine or make all my fears even worse because I was thinking them so much, and they just get growing and growing in my mind. And at some point, I was always writing a bucket list of the trims that I like to do. And lots of times that I write my bucket list, I want to do. If I had more courage, I'd like to do this. I'd like to swim in the waters without being afraid of sharks. And then I started to analyze it. Like a lot of these fears, when they live in your head, once you write them down in a paper, I realized first I have to acknowledge what I'm afraid of. It's sharks. And then I can say, is it a justified fear or not? Or is it just something that lives in my head? And yeah, sharks can beat you, and that can happen. So there is a reason to be afraid of that. But should I be afraid when I swim in a lake of the sharks? Obviously not. So now this kind of a fear started to interfere in my life too much and started to affect. And like I said, I felt in some ways, like often happens when you have fears, and especially phobias, that your world starts to shrink and it limits all the things that you can do. So I think that was kind of I needed the catalyst. It's worse that I acknowledge that I have this fear, and then it's a decision. So what can I do? I have to take action to go and get over those shark fears. And it wasn't easy. It was very gradual, and it was a slow process. And then in the end, I was traveling the world with Shep and diving with man-eating sharks, from great whites to tiger sharks and bull sharks. And something that I was so afraid of, something that I never thought I could do, I slowly learned to enjoy it, and it became one of my passion. And not only that I was not afraid of sharks, I started to love them, and I became a big active supporter of sharks and trying to educate people about the importance in our oceans, that people wouldn't slaughter them for no reason.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, it's really cool that you were able to turn that fear around that was such a negative aspect of your life, and then turn that into something that's so positive. And then again, on top of it, has a message. You're right, sharks are amazing. What an amazing creature. And they've got, unfortunately, because of that movie, they've been deemed such an evil creature, and it's become such a misunderstood creature. I mean, of the ocean. It's such an amazing beast. It's fucking cool.
Well, media loves monsters, and this is like the last kind of monster that lives in the ocean and can actually eat human beings, and does. It's one of the last few predators that actually does attack human beings every now and then. And anytime it happens anywhere in the world, they love to blow up that story. So for instance, we're hearing stories in California about shark attacks in Australia. Why is that? How is that beneficial? I mean, how does that mean anything to us, right? It doesn't. We don't hear about bee sting deaths in Australia. They're having them. Now
that you mentioned it, you might know.
but the point is that's why people have such a skewed fear, because whenever a person gets attacked by a shark, you hear about it. And it's very terrifying, the idea of being eaten by something. That's a primal fear deep inside a human psyche, because we used to get eaten by things a lot. And then as we developed technology, and as we created societies, and as we wiped out our predators, all of a sudden that didn't become something anymore. We don't get eaten by predators. Yet, when you're in the ocean, every now and then, on very rare occasions, a shark will eat somebody, and that freaks people out. And it's funny because, yes, it happens, but people don't realize how rare it actually is. So that's where the managing or understanding true risk comes in, right? So if you took a list of things that kills people around the world, shark attacks are underneath getting killed by coconuts.
Vending machines also kill more people than sharks.
Vending machines kill more people. More people are bitten by people in Manhattan alone than are from sharks around the world. So once you start understanding that, you start realizing that, yes, sharks can be dangerous, and yes, under certain circumstances, they can attack people, and yes, sometimes they do. But it's so rare that it's not really something to be scared of. And that's what's interesting, because, Iiro went through a process of being scared of sharks and overcoming it. And I did too. Everyone does, because you are told by the media that they're scary and dangerous. And our movies do show them as man-eaters, and you do think of them as monsters. And, I was 16 when I was in the water with a shark for the first time. And my first time was just snorkeling in Belize. I wasn't expecting to see a shark. And just a little baby nurse shark came swimming by. And, as a 16-year-old, I was just jazzed. I'm like, oh my God, I saw a shark, even though, nurse sharks are basically harmless. They're pretty much just a fish. But, but as a 16-year-old, I was like, I just saw a shark. And then my stepdad at the time, he wasn't my stepdad yet, but my mother was with him, and we were hanging out and stuff, and he wanted to bond. So he asked me if I wanted to learn how to scuba dive, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure. That sounds like fun. So I went diving and I died, but we'll get into that some other time. But
oh, that's right.
yeah, both sank and I drowned and I literally died. But in any event, then I ended up like surviving, and then I went diving the next day, and I ended up not dying the second time, and then I ended up really liking it. And then we found out there was a shark dive not too far away from where we were, and he was like, I bet you wouldn't go shark diving. And I'm like, let's do it. Let's see. And we went, and I fell in love with him like right away. And then I spent, like literally that's what my life became. It became traveling around the world diving with sharks. So from 16 till I started base jumping, which was, 21, that was my main thing, was diving with sharks. So now, I've been...
Now with the shark thing, so when we have Iiro's side of it. Now, with your side of it, was at first, did you have that fear with the nurse shark, or when you first started getting into it?
No, not really. Sharks were, I would say they excited me. I was never really scared of them. Like they weren't something, before I saw that shark, I had like a fear that everyone has, just like, oh, it's a shark, they're dangerous. You just think that. I wouldn't call it a fear. I wasn't like, I didn't avoid the water because they were in it. I wasn't worried about them or thinking about them. They didn't really enter my mind. It wasn't something I thought about. But when I was in the water and I saw one, I got super excited. And I don't know if I would call it fear. Because now fear, I have such an understanding. It would be hard to call it that. It was definitely excitement and maybe some fear the first time. But after that, I don't... It's funny. I'm not scared of sharks. Like sharks don't scare me.
So never. Let's list for both of you what sharks you guys have been with. I know, rattle off the list, but the bull sharks, the great whites.
Well, you start with the most dangerous. Iiro and I were great white sharks without cages. Nice. we dove great white sharks, no cages, and we were in the water with a 16-foot great white. All of us touching it at the same time. We've spent quite some time in the water with great white sharks. Tiger sharks. We've been on many, many trips all over the world, in Fiji, in Bahamas. In the water with, I've been in the water with up to, I think, 12 tiger sharks at once with no cages.
Wow.
And we've spent countless hours underwater with tiger sharks, bull sharks. Again, I've spent days of my life in the water with bull sharks without cages. Great hammerheads. Tons of great hammerheads. Every kind of reef shark, white tip, silver tip, black tip, gray reef, Caribbean reef.
Yeah, it's almost like a list. Like when you're afraid of something, your world shrinks. But when you find your passion, your world expands. And that's what we were doing with Jeb a lot of the time. So it was amazing. Like we were just picking the most beautiful shark diving destinations and went for it. And we learned that all these different shark species have different personalities. When we were with great whites, you kind of go underwater them and you can see all the scars and they're like black eyes and they are like menacing. They're
stalking you.
Yeah, they are truly the predators. You can see that they constantly thinking the ways to eat you. But something like tiger sharks, they're more like golden retrievers. They have more of a personality, so you can interact with them. They're more curious and they approach you even not with an intention to eat you. So, and kind of a bull sharks maybe are the garbage disposals of the ocean. They're kind of just like a little bit stupid things that they kind of bite first and ask questions
rocks and stuff. So that's why they bite so many people, is because they just kind of bite shit.
But look, I like how you guys kind of reframed, because again, going from the perspective of how the media exploits stuff, and it's like, oh, the monsters, the killer sharks, and then you kind of put this aspect more of the beauty of the creature, and then when you look at them, they're amazing, right? Yeah. It's like what a machine.
And also understanding the species, because there's so much misconceptions of what it comes to shark attacks and how they act underwater. So a same shark can be dangerous in different type of surroundings, but when we do these type of shark dives, we make sure that the surroundings are perfect. And something that you have to know about sharks, they hardly ever attack underwater. They usually, what they do, they go up in the surface, and that's where all the fish that are dying or are sick are going. So same shark can be quite dangerous on the surface, but when you're scuba diving underwater, they don't really react to it. And because they see you as an apex predator, you have a very good explanation why they don't attack humans.
Well, it's also they're stalking predators. They like to sneak up on their prey. And that's why a lot of fish have what are called false eyes. So if you see fish, there's these little spots on their tails, and what that is it's to try to convince a shark that they're seeing them. So if a shark's purpose isn't to kill the biggest, strongest thing in the water. Their job is to kill the sick, dying, and weak. That's what they're there to do. And they're also there to sneak up on their prey. If their prey is strong and healthy and sees them, they don't want to waste the energy in trying to catch them because it's just, they have to be very efficient in how they use the energy. So they're not going to waste their time going after the biggest, strongest stuff. So that's part of it. So a big part of this is they like to sneak up on you. So there's certain rules that you have when you're in the water with sharks. And the number one rule is keep your eye on them. You got to keep, like, I always say that, people, they never believe this, but it's true. Crossing the street is more dangerous than diving with sharks. And you have to follow a certain set of rules when you cross the street. Like, you have to look both ways, make sure a car isn't coming before you put your foot into the crosswalk, right? If you were to just close your eyes and walk across the street, you're probably going to get hit by a car. I mean, it's pretty simple. And sharks are very similar. If you don't look at them and you don't pay attention to them, well, there's a good chance they're going to bite you. I mean, that's just all, they'll sneak up on you and do it. So, but as long as you're making eye contact, normally they don't want anything to do with you. They're not interested in attacking you if you're staring at them. That actually kind of scares them. But a great way, like what Iiro's talking about, is I always say when we were doing great white sharks, it was very fascinating to see how scared of us they were. And I always kind of wonder, like, why would a 16-foot apex predator be terrified of us, like these little tiny humans that are, pretty, we swim really slow and are kind of helpless in the water. So why would it be scared of us? And I started thinking, imagine you're a 16-foot great white shark, right? And you're just cruising through the water, and all of a sudden you smell blood. And you're like, whoa, let's go investigate. Maybe there's something to eat. So you start heading towards the blood, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, there's a lot of blood. Because when we pour blood, we pour tons of it. Like, we are pouring so much blood in the water that it's enormous amounts. So the shark instantly is like, okay, this is an enormous amount of blood, meaning I'm coming into another predator. I didn't put the blood there. So there's something that's going to be there, right? And they're not sure. Is it a bigger great white? Could it be a killer whale? I mean, what am I coming into? Because 16-foot great white's a massive predator, but there are bigger ones, So as he's coming in super concerned. Like, okay, what am I coming into? And then all of a sudden, as he's coming into the blood, now there's this little person in the middle of the blood just staring at him, not scared, right? And if you imagine when great white sharks approach things, right, as it comes towards something, that something moves. Things get out of a shark's way. Like, that's all there is. If you're a 16-foot great white shark and something smaller than you and you're coming at it, it moves out of the way. So if it doesn't move out of the way, like if you're coming at it and it stands its ground with you or approaches you, then in their mind, you're a threat. Whatever that is, they have no idea what you are. They've never seen anything like you. You have bubbles coming out of you. You're making all kinds of weird sound. They can't really tell how big you are because everything in the ocean swims like sideways. You're standing upright. So they don't really know how far back you go. You look really thick, like, oh, that thing's thick, and they have a difficulty judging. You are alien to them. You're literally an alien. You're an alien coming into their environment. So they're uneasy and they're afraid. And it's weird because you can see it in their body language. They're scared of you. And it's actually kind of difficult to get them to come close enough because we're photographers. We're trying to get pictures. And they always say if your picture isn't good enough, it's because you're not close enough, right? So the point is you got to get really close to get good photographs. And it's challenging because the sharks are scared. And I always found that really fascinating, because it's not, we're talking about fear right now, right? And it's not just human beings that have fear. Everything in nature has fear, right? Because we're all trying to survive in an environment with predators that are trying to eat us and make our lives end, right? So we're all dealing with this. And his, like, it's funny because Iiro talks about his experience with sharks and how he did his process to like learn how to kind of cope and then kind of fall in love with them. And I had something similar. It wasn't with sharks. I was already kind of mellow with them to begin with, but mine was snakes. So I was terrified of snakes. And what was funny is when I was a little kid, my parents were art dealers and they would travel all over the world and they would buy art and then bring it back to the States and sell it. And we went on a year-long trip to Nepal and India. And during the India portion of the trip, I was like around, I think I was 5. I just turned 6. So it was like right around my 6th birthday. They took me to snake charmers. And at this point, I'm a little kid. Like, I don't know much about anything, And I remember sitting down and they put this massive basket in front of me. And as they opened the basket, a massive king cobra just came out of the basket and just started like swaying.
Cool.
And I was terrified. And the feeling was really strange. I didn't understand why this creature made me feel the way it did, because I had no understanding of danger. Like I didn't know anything about snakes. No one had told me anything about snakes. I was very young, but for some reason, this creature created a feeling inside of me that was very powerful. And it's strange because I was very intrigued by that feeling. Like, why is this creature making me feel this way? And during it, they had many different kinds of snakes come out, and then they let me hold one, and my sister held one, and the feeling was very energizing, and it was very exciting. And when I got home from that trip, I started catching snakes. I found them, just that feeling of fear was so compelling that I wanted to understand why they made me feel that way. So I started by catching little garden snakes, and then I started catching, bull snakes, and then I started catching rattlesnakes. And by the time I was 7 years old, I was coming home with rattlesnakes as pets. So that was kind of my process of dealing with fear. And then what's interesting is that from that point forward, that became my process throughout life. So anytime I would get that sensation of something scaring me, I would figure out the safe thing. Like, how do you approach this thing how can I get that feeling in the safest way possible where it's not going to cause damage? And then I would slowly start accelerating it until you finally get to the part where it can hurt you. So it's an interesting process in how to deal with fear and how to learn how to cope with fear. But it has to do with exposure. You must expose yourself to that fear. So let's say spiders. Let's say you're scared of spiders, right? Okay, so you start with like little daddy long legs, right? They can't hurt you. They're harmless. They can't bite you. But they are still creepy. If you're scared of spiders,
how do they move?
Like this. And then you slowly start handling bigger and bigger spiders until eventually you'll start like that sensation. You'll get used to it with the safer spider, and then you can get yourself a big tarantula. And then with the tarantula, now this thing can actually bite you. It's not going to kill you, but it will hurt. And then you get used to the tarantula, and now all of a sudden, your average house spider no longer bothers you.
Right.
And it helps you just in your life. And I think everyone, I always, when I meet somebody and they're scared of something that's simple, like let's just say they're scared of a worm, right? Like there are people who are scared of like really random, strange things. And you're like, you're scared of worms? Oh my God, that's a great one. Because that's an easy one to get over. Yeah. Like that's super simple. It can't hurt you. So let's go get some worms, and you just, and the whole point is just exposure, right?
And do it in very small portions, because if you fail at worms, you don't actually start with the real worm. You can start something like a wave
or
worm.
jelly worm.
Exactly. Anything. You just that's the thing. Like, how big is the fear? You just have to split it smaller and smaller and smaller decision. And I think there's a quite interesting hack. I read about it maybe 6 months ago, and it's really helpful because if you try to read any literature or any like videos and people are talking about you're overcoming fear and becoming fearless, then it's all bullshit. So there is not like a magic word you can snap your fingers and somehow become fearless. Like all these kind of a gradual exposure based on the fact that if you don't you can live with less fear in your life. We happen to find passion for it. So sometimes that also happens that you're afraid, you can learn that they're not as afraid and you could learn to love them. But a lot of the things you don't become fearless, but you just learn to live with less fear in your life. And I think there's an interesting hack how you can do it, because I think you tapped it in a little bit when you were talking about whether you were afraid when you started to first time shark dive, and you said maybe it was an excitement, when maybe it was afraid, but that's the whole thing that they figure out a brain hack how you can get over your fears, because the physical reaction of being afraid, your heart is pumping, you get sweaty palms, and all those symptoms that you were describing when you saw the snake for the first time. Those exact same physical reactions are the same as when you are excited, and your brain is not necessarily always sure which one is it. Am I afraid or am I excited? And you can actually hack your brain to think that rather than being afraid, you are excited. That's why when anyone goes on the stage and you say okay, this is going to go well, and I'm excited to go there, rather than, oh shit, I wonder what they're going to be telling me. So that's a really good hack, and you can combine it with kind of a mindfulness and also practice of vision. You give your brain a reason to tell why you are excited. It's just not that words. The brain is not going to believe you if you say, hey, I'm just excited. But you actually have to tell your brain why I'm excited. For example, if you are afraid of flying, and then you sit on the plane and you start getting those symptoms of being afraid of something. So you have to kind of think that you already, before you go on that plane, you have to visualize that the reasons that you go on a plane, the reasons that you conquer this fear and take an action is what waits you on the other side. It's maybe you can get excited about walking on the beach with your friends, or maybe you can get excited that you can have a wonderful roller coaster ride and wherever you're going to go. So then that is the reason why you get excited. So next time you're going to be on a plane and then you start feeling those fear symptoms, you count backwards from 5. You go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And what that does, it changes your thoughts from other side of the brain, from being afraid into something that you kind of reprogram and rehack. And when you say like 5, 4, 3, 2, 5, well, I should count down from 5. Let me try this again.
He's totally confused his mind, so he's not afraid of anything now.
So you go for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm excited because I can't wait to meet my friends once this plane lands. And it works. It's going to alleviate the brain. So I think it's important that I want to give a little tool to try it in these situations.
Well, I think that a big part of it, I mean, I'm sure that that's very helpful. But in my life, what I've noticed is facing small fears, right? Because this is the thing. When you start with a snake, for instance, your first fear of that little garden snake that isn't actually dangerous, that fear is real regardless of how dangerous it is. You're still terrified of it. So you're still facing a very powerful fear inside of yourself, regardless of the danger that's involved. So by facing that fear, right, you start learning how to cope with that sensation. You get the sensation, you cope with it, you deal with it, and then through exposure, it starts becoming less, right? And then you up it to the next kind of snake, which is a little bit bigger, a little more dangerous. It can bite you, it can hurt you. Okay, now the fear is just as strong as it was with the first snake, right? But again, you'll slowly start getting used to that sensation. And the reason why it's important to overcome that fear is because it actually carries over into other fears in life. So every single time you get an opportunity to overcome a fear that isn't actually dangerous, it's great opportunity to train yourself how to deal with the other fears in your life that do matter, right? So the best way I can say is this. When I started base jumping and started facing actual, genuine, life-threatening risk that can kill you, all of a sudden, the rest of the fears in my life melted away. And they literally seem almost infinitesimal by comparison, right? So now all of a sudden asking Sally out for a date is no longer such a big deal.
Yeah.
What's the worst you're going to do? Say no? I mean, did you die? No. So that's why it's super important. I was once doing this speech, right? Because a big fear of people is like public speaking. I've never had a problem with it. It doesn't bother me at all. But it's part of it is because by the time I started public speaking, I'd already been through such horrifying crap that was like, what, right? And one day I was doing a speech for like 3,000 people in this arena, whatever. And this guy, he was like a rugby player. And he was the one who was announcing me. And as we're behind stage, he's like, man, I'm so nervous. I'm like, really? He's all, you aren't? I'm like, no, why would I be? I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? What, I say something wrong? Who cares? I mean, it doesn't matter, dude. It doesn't make any difference. I'll do the best I can do. They'll either like it or they won't. And he's just like, oh, dude, I'm freaking out right now. And I'm like, you're a rugby player, man. You're in front of people all the time. He's all, it's different when you're talking. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But it was just a fascinating, interesting thing. So that's what I've noticed. I've noticed the reason why it's important to face the fear of a spider, or face the fear of going on top of a ladder, or face the fear of asking Sally out for a date, or face the fear of anything you have, is because it will help you in the other parts of your life where it matters, where it's important, right? Where now all of a sudden you're facing your boss, and your boss is kind of on you, and you need a raise because you need to pay your bills and raise your children and take care of your life and your family's life. Those are important fears. Those are things you need to be able to deal with. And you've dealt with all the other little fears or other fears that aren't that important. It will help you cope in that situation because you've felt it before. You've experienced it before. You've overcome it before. And that's why you do it. That's why you go on the skydive. You go do the tandem, not because you're, I'm jumping out of an airplane. No, it's because it's scary, right? And it's a controlled environment. And the feeling is something that you can then understand how to cope with and deal with, so that when that faces you somewhere where it matters, you can do it. And it shows you can do it. And that's important. It's important for you to know inside yourself that you can face fear, that you can overcome fear, and that you can control fear. And that's why I think everybody needs to step out of their comfort zone and do things that scare them. period. Because unfortunately, humans they try to avoid things that frighten them, and they try to avoid things that cause pain. And that's built into our DNA. We don't want to feel pain, and we don't want to feel scared. Yeah. But once you do feel those things, it really does benefit your life, and it makes you stronger, which at the end of the day is what we all want to be. Yeah. We want to be strong, we want to be capable, and we want to be able to deal with whatever life throws at us. So that's why, for me, I think my life has been very fear-driven, and some people say that's a bad thing. Like, you hear a lot of psychologists are like, oh, don't be driven by fear. Bullshit. You should be driven by your fears. Those things are things you should be facing and literally trying to deal with. And this is the thing, you're never going to have no fear. It doesn't work that way. We all have fear. I'm scared of friggin' everything I do. But that's not the point, right? Courage comes from doing things that scare you. Literally, you cannot have courage without fear. If something doesn't scare you, it doesn't take courage to do it, right? So I think one of the reasons why people really like courageous people is because they see, oh my God, they emulate that. They wish they could do that. And I can just tell you right now, you can. I'm not special. Iiro isn't special. We're not superhuman. We're people like everyone else. We have fears. The only difference is we have chosen to confront those fears over and over and over decades, over a lifetime. And now when we face fear, we do it with we do it.
Well, you are special in a different way.
I mean, we've discussed we're crazy, but yeah.
But here, to throw just into the mix, just for me listening to you guys, telling the stories, I started getting this interesting aspect of knowledge and the fear of knowledge, which would be the fear of the unknown. And it seems like with the sharks, with the snakes, with certain aspects of certain fears, it seems like a little kind of key component to it is knowledge. Yeah. And where people are scared of something because they don't take the time to educate themselves
exactly.
on it, right?
Often people say that the biggest fear, that the mother of all fear, is uncertainty. And most of the fear are coming from that, the things that we don't know. So I think that you hit that right in the nail with that.
Yeah, because it's so cool when you guys are, again, explaining the shark thing, and the shark's the perfect example. It's like you guys have obviously done your homework and spent a lot of time educating yourselves on sharks, the different species of sharks, how they operate, how they act.
You study their behavior. You need to understand what causes a shark attack. Like, what would make a shark attack somebody? And once you understand what triggers shark attack, that helps you avoid that situation. Right. So the knowledge itself is very beneficial.
Right, can mitigate.
And the experience. Yeah. Because not only do you have the knowledge, you also have the experience with the sharks, so you see what triggers them. So yes, you're exactly right. The unknown is one of the scariest things that people deal with.
Yeah, look, I have a problem. For me, being out in the ocean, people are always like, oh, start surfing. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm probably too old. But second of all, I don't like the feeling. Again, this is a fear for me.
Something under you.
Fuck.
Yeah.
But if you guys said, let's go shark diving, I'm like, hey, I'm more down for that so that I can see what it is. Mm-hmm. Because I'm seeing, as opposed to the unknown of oh shit, what just rubbed against me? I'm defenseless. Yep. I don't have I at least want an opportunity.
You know what's really funny is that with all my knowledge of sharks, the one thing that I do understand is that being on the surface is the worst place to be. And surfing is one of the, but this gives you an idea of how undangerous sharks, that fact they're not that dangerous because they don't attack surfers very often, but they do sometimes. But the reason why surfers and swimmers, like surface swimmers, are the number one groups really who are getting attacked is because they flop around on the surface and they're not making eye contact with the shark. So the shark, if you think about it, they have something on their back called a lateral line. And the lateral line picks up vibration in the water. So a shark can feel your heart beating. Okay, they can actually feel, and they have things that can pick up the electromagnetic current off your body as well. But when you're on a surface, like with a surfboard, flapping your arms and legs, they see you as what you are.
A dead seal.
Helpless. You're helpless. You're a helpless creature flopping around on the surface like you're wounded. You're literally ringing a dinner bell. And the fact that the shark doesn't eat surfers exclusively boggles my mind. It seems like if I was a shark, I'd be feeding on surfers every day. That would be my main source of food. But they don't. But that just shows you they're actually smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah, well, look, speaking of sharks, real quickly, I didn't know this about them. I saw this, I think is it the great oceanic white tip?
Yeah, those are big. Yeah.
I saw this cool little clip about them resting. in like a whole group of them down low.
No,
Those are different ones.
That's
That's
different. That would be white tip reef sharks do that. They're capable.
Like a nap?
There are some sharks capable of pushing water through their gills. They're one of them. So they can sit on the bottom without
And they're
moving.
kind of resting, right?
Yes.
Wow.
But then there are actually pelagic sharks, ones that cannot do that. Like they actually have to constantly keep swimming to keep like water flowing through their gills. But what they'll do is sometimes it's something like there are certain types of sharks that will go into caves where current is running through. And they'll stick their pectoral fins into the rocks and let the current go through their mouth.
In Tahiti, we see that, like there was in those atolls or something, and there were 50 sharks, and they were kind of resting in the current. It was interesting to see.
Yeah, gray reef sharks will do it sometimes, but there are sharks that can rest on the bottom, though. Like lemon sharks can rest on the bottom. And white tips can rest on the bottom. But there are certain species that can't rest on the bottom, but they will actually find currents where they can just have it pumped through their gills to give them a little rest. Yeah.
And the shark species you mentioned, oceanic white tip, that's the only out of those like man-eating sharks that are out there that we haven't done it yet. Everything else,
It's on the list.
Yeah, but those are the ones. I think you can go like Egypt somewhere to Red Sea, and those are the sharks that every time you have a shipwreck and there's like 1,000 people in the water, and then the next day out of 48 hours there's like 400 of them have been eaten alive. So those are always oceanic.
You hear those stories from like World War II, because at one point the oceanic white tip was the most abundant animal over 200 pounds on Earth. The oceans were filled with them, and they used to follow ships. Like that was one of their things. They would follow ships and wait for stuff to fall off of it to eat, because they live in a barren wasteland. They live in the open oceans, and it's really hard for them to find food. So they're very opportunistic, very fast, and they attack things quickly. So they're highly aggressive sharks. But unfortunately, that's what actually got them wiped out. Because if you throw a hook in the water, they grab it instantly. So all the longliners were just pulling them out. So they've pulled hundreds of millions of them out of the water year after year for decade after decade. And now the oceanic white tip is one of the rarest sharks on Earth. They're very hard to find. And that happened in only like, I think 3 decades. They went from being one of the most abundant animals on Earth, over 200 pounds, to being virtually extinct. Like within 30 years. So
and that's what's happening to all the sharks right now. People are shark finning, and there's been a lot of legislation to try to prevent that. And I think there's a lot of work that people are doing towards China, where the demand is for the shark fin soup, but they still get slaughtered for no good reason. And I think that's an important and on government level that could
and it shows how dangerous fear can be. Right. So the reason why sharks are being slaughtered at the rate they are is because people are terrified of them. And that's been a problem for a very long time. So people are scared of them. And you always hear the saying, the only good shark is a dead shark. So unfortunately, this mass slaughter of sharks has been going on for a very, very long time because no one gives a shit. They're like, oh, really? They're killing sharks? Seems like a big problem, whatever. Like, no one cares.
Because they're scared.
But
because usually we want to preserve the species that are cute and the nice ones.
But what the problem is that sharks are absolutely crucial for a healthy ocean. Think of them as the garbage disposal. They're the ones who eat the sick, the dying, the weak. They're the ones who keep, the survival of the fittest. They're the ones who make sure that the species are evolving and only the strong are living. So they are actually evolution engines that make the reefs healthier. And actually, that's how you know a reef is healthy. If you go to a reef and there's a lot of sharks, that's a healthy reef. If you go to a reef without sharks, you're not going to find a lot of fish there either. The reef is dying. Because what happens is you need the apex predators to keep everything healthy and regulated. So unfortunately, our fears are causing the destruction of the oceans that we all need to survive. So that's why fear is you got to always balance like fear. Because if you have too much fear of something, and human beings, when we're scared of stuff, we wipe it off the face of the planet, which is a big problem. So again, to me, I think fear is one of my favorite topics. It's something that I've spent my entire life training, trying to understand, learning about, experiencing, and embracing. Like, this is the thing, Iiro and I am not fearless. This podcast is called No Fear, not N-O fear, K-N-O-W fear. It's about understanding fear. Because once you understand fear, you can use it to your benefit. And that's what people do not understand the power of the dark side. Like, literally, that's literally the truth. Like, once you understand fear, you can use it in your life to benefit your life. And I know that Iiro and I the amount of living that we've done and the amount of things that we've experienced because we've faced our fears is mind numbing. It's remarkable. Like I've lived 10 lifetimes in my one because I was willing to go out there and do the shit that scared me. You know, and I see people and I just look at them like, dude, go out there and do what scares you. If I meet someone and they tell me something they're afraid of, I'm like, let's go do it. Like whatever it is, like I will help you. I feel fortunate because I'm really good I've learned over decades of time how to deal with my own fear, but I'm also really good and I really enjoy other people's fear. I actually think
That's a little sinister. It's a little sinister.
No, it's
not
good,
joking.
No, because it helps him. Like Iiro, we would go on base jumps and I would see that he wasn't scared enough. So I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to help him really experience this to its absolute?
And you're already doing like most dangerous sport in the world. Like, how do you scare him even more? By the way, I know that there's some bears in the landing area.
And there were.
See, I like, what the fuck? I like
Why
only.
would you say that now?
Only for Iiro. I like for everybody else. You're like, do not base jump or wingsuit because you will die. But Iiro, here, let's amp it up.
No, but how I always do this, it's like, yes, my first thing with everyone when they say they want to get into base jumping is don't do that. Like my goal is to talk a person out of it. Period. But if I can't talk you out of it, there was no talking him out of shit. He wanted to do it. So I'm like, okay, if you want to do it, let's fucking do it. If we're going to do this, let's do this. And guess what? It's going to be fucking scary.
It was always scary.
See, he needed to be there for your first shark dive. It wouldn't have been the little shark. You've been like, can I get with the baby shark? He's like, no, let's go for the great white.
Well, that's where we ended up.
We did. It was good. It was fun.
Well, look, all this stuff is amazing. I think the different components, the different things we're speaking about, with educating yourself about fear, understanding fear, facing your fear are all just great aspects of everything we've spoken about. So I appreciate you guys digging into this. And just to let everybody know, please subscribe to the 3777 channel. Also, you can go to our website at 3777.com to get unique and custom merchandise. We appreciate you guys for listening, for watching, and we will see you next time.